My name's Saree Hewlett. I run Core Fusion, Pilates and Physio, and we're based in Hillary's. And the majority of clients that we tend to get in are people who have probably been everywhere else. They have tried physio, they've tried chiro, they've tried massage, they've tried exercise, and even though we can fix most things, like we are an acute physio service as well, quite a lot of our clients come to us because they think they have no other option either. We're really good at chronic pain. We're really good at looking at people in terms of what your biomechanics is like and how that has a knock-on effect with how you move and how you function, but also how that can influence how your body is working and how your body is reacting. So if you have an injury, or you've had a car accident, or you've fallen over, or you've picked up something stupid, or done a sporting injury, which many of us obviously do, you get an acute response. What happens is your body reacts. You get that inflammatory response. You get the tissues going into swelling. You might have some bruising. You might have a little bit of problems with moving. You might be in really acute pain and not be able to move. And that sort of inflammatory process lasts, 24 to 48 hours. In that time, the inflammatory response is what's going to help you. Thinking these days is that we don't want to suppress that too much. What we want to do is manage your pain. And then after that 24, 48 hours, then, that inflammatory process needs to start getting resolved so that you can start with the repair process. So, the initial thing is everything swells up. You get that huge, muscle spasm, protective spasm around the area. And then after that, you can't move because you're very guarded. Once 48 hours has come on, you should be starting to repair what's gone on. So, that process, depending on what you've done, can take 3 to 6 weeks. So like you come to us with an injury, we'll say, you've done a mild strain, look at it being about 3 weeks, maybe 6. If you've done something a little bit more serious, then you're looking at that 6 weeks, maybe 12. And that sort of corresponds with things like ligament injuries and tissue repair and tissue response to repair. And it's in that sort of early days where it's really important what you actually do. If you find that, you sit around and do nothing, then the olden days of I've hurt my back, I'm going to go to bed for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and wait for it to get better. That's not the thinking these days at all. The thinking is you do need to function, you do need to move, you do need to be doing something, but obviously you've got pain responses and bodyguarding and all the other things that are coming into play that are going to stop you, and that's where you need the help. Once you've got past that sort of 3 to 6 weeks position where what's going on is your body's done that repair, or it's sort of done that repairing of tissues, the body then needs to sort of strengthen that area up, and it needs to sort of have those tissues stressed in the right way that they actually strengthen up. So if we go with soft tissue, say you've strained your back and you've strained your back muscles, you've got your spine, and your spine's going to go, don't want to move, and everything just gets compressed. Okay, that's your first sort of 24, 48 hours. Then what starts to happen is the strands are laid down as that area of muscle is repaired, but they're laid down all over the place. You've got a massive area of swelling, and the tissues just go and lie down. And in terms of their fibers, their repairs are all over the place. Now, what movement does is it allows those tissues to work out where they should be. So if your muscle is orientated up and down, and that's where the fibers lie, if you stress and you move those fibers, that's where the fiber will get laid down. They'll be laid down in the right strands. It doesn't mean they're strong. It does mean, obviously they're still weak. If you think of your muscles like great big cables, and what's happening is you're laying down the little threads at the moment. You want all those threads to line up and all those threads to be stressed in the right way. And then as they get thicker and they get better, they'll turn into more like the rope structures, so they'll get a little bit thicker, and then they'll obviously work out that they're cables and they should work this way. And that's a very simplistic way of looking at it. But if you look at it in the early stages, the muscles at that first point, they're very, very fine. They're very, very weak still, and they haven't had that stress and strain of movement to let them work out how they should react. If you don't move well, and if you don't sort of do the right things, that's when everything's sort of laid everywhere, and that's when it becomes what they call scar tissue. And the scar tissue is, can be very clumpy and lumpy, and it does impede how you move because the lines of stress and the lines of mechanics aren't quite where they should be. So like I said, the olden thought process of, we leave everybody and we sit there for 2 weeks until the pain settles and then you get them up. That's not quite what happens now. What happens now is that you start laying down those movements within what you can tolerate. So for those of you that, you've had an ankle injury before, you'll know that if you come to doing this and this, it's probably not too bad. You turn the ankle in and out and it's absolute agony. And what we generally do is strap and tape it. If you've done the lateral ligament before, we'll strap and tape it so you can do the up and down movement very well, and that's walking, but you don't stress it into that turning. So things like sitting cross legs, standing and going on an even ground actually stresses that ligament, and that's when you're in danger of damaging it again. So that's a simplistic way of looking at it. Block the movements that are, vulnerable, and encourage the movements that you can do with ease. And back pain is very similar to that, and chronic pain is very similar to that. You've got that little window at the beginning where you've got potentially 3 months, and modern research also says that in that sort of 3 months time, most back pain will self-resolve because it's had that sort of healing process and that time of modeling and that time of repair and that time of you trying to get it stronger again. So 80 odd % of us will get back pain. So that's a massive amount of the population who will have back pain, and a lot of that will self-resolve after 3 months. Now the other stat is, out of those that get back pain, 80% of those will start to get recurring back pain. And the problem that's happening, especially similar to like your ligament in your ankle, you end up with people will come in and say, I've got a weak ankle. And what they're really saying is, I've had an ankle injury that was a ligament injury and I've never rehabbed it properly. So every time I do something that stresses it, my ankle just goes. And it's the same principle with the back. If you have had back pain and you've had a back issue, what tends to happen is, if you don't do the right things at the right time, you're left with this area in your back that's a little bit weak. When you're sore and you have back pain, the back will try and protect it. So you will get muscles that go into spasms. So quite commonly, it's your quadratus lumborum, your hip flexors will spasm. You might find that you're very tense and you're very guarded in how you walk and very guarded in how you move. And what's going on is the body's just trying to splint the back area that is a problem. Now, when you do that, what happens is the back actually compresses because the muscles are coming in and trying to give you that supportive corset. But it means that your deeper muscles, which, this is where all the core work and core stuff has come from, your deeper muscles basically switch off because they are very, very, they're overpowered by your big postural muscles. So if you look at your big long muscles in the back, your hip flexor muscles and your QL muscles, think of those as your moving muscles. They're the movements that allow you to go side to side, they allow you to twist, they hold you upright, they allow you to propel you forward. And then when we're talking about your core muscles, we're talking about the deeper muscles, and they're things like your transversus abdominis, which is your deepest stomach muscle. They're things like your pelvic floor. They're things like your multifidus, which is, they basically only join 1, 2, or 3 vertebrae together. And then, those muscles are the ones that, alongside your diaphragm and your breathing, help and propel you forward in terms of having good posture and good core. And they're muscles that don't actually compress you, they actually lengthen and support you. So you can see I've set up a little bit more here. If I'm working my core muscles, which I am at the moment, then I'm a little bit taller. Now, if I try and change that over to work my posture muscles, which is my QL and my stomach and my hip flexors, you can see that I drop. So when I'm working my posture muscles, I'm a little bit taller, and when I don't, I sort of compress and everything falls into space. Now, this is the crux of things when you've had an initial back problem, that if you don't sort of rehabilitate it properly and you don't go back to, using these support muscles well, you then start to overuse these posture muscles. And very common with people, and especially obviously post childbirth, because we've had stomach muscles that have stretched. We might have had a cesarean section, we might have had a lot of trauma around our pelvic floor, and that has a knock-on effect with how our core muscles work. And it's not just a case of coming in and saying, I need to strengthen my core. It's a case of looking at, okay, so your core's weak. Is it actually able to function? Has it become inhibited and unable to work because it doesn't know what it's doing? And do we have to actually make that work somehow? Is it working and it's got too much strength from all your posture muscles, so all the other muscles are doing far too much? And that's where rehab and doing the right thing is probably the difference between whether you get recurring back pain that you manage well, or whether you get recurring back pain that is just in a chronic cycle of coming back, and all you're doing is really managing the symptoms. And that's something that you need to sort of be aware of, that if you do get pain, once you've got an ability to know what's starting it off, and once you've got an ability to know what it is that's causing it and how to then fix that, that's how you get that long-lasting effect. Because you're going to get pain again. There's, being realistic, we can't say, yep, you've had chronic pain for years, it's been going on, and you get pain every 6 months, we can fix it and you're good, you're never going to have it again. There will always be an area of weakness in there. It's similar to, if you've got a bump in your car, and that's the first thing that's going to go, that there's an area that's been stressed, and that area is a little bit weaker, and that's the area that will probably go if you went into a bumper again. It's going to crumple in that same spot. And the back pain is very similar. So the history that we tend to see is, I've had this pain, it lasted a week, I got rid of it, it was okay, then it came back a year later, and it lasted maybe 10 days, and then it started coming back a bit more frequently, and it's taken me longer to get rid of, until now in the last 2 years I get pain, and it takes me like 2 months to get rid of it, but it comes back the next month, and it's still taking me a long time to get rid of it, and now it's just constant. And when you look at what's happened to your back and your spine and your posture over that time, you might have originally have had maybe a slight disc that's inflamed, or you might have had a problem with your muscle, or you might have had a stiff facet joint. But what happens over time is that the body then compensates. So my back hurts me on this side, so because it hurts me on this side, I'm going to lean slightly to take some pressure off. And then you sort of realize that you're walking that way, and because you're walking that way, the top half compensates a little bit more. Because you've then got that skew, you end up with a little bit of a curve in your spine. It might look like you've got one leg longer than the other. You might start walking a bit differently to how you walked before, and you'll find that when you actually look at the intricacies of what's going on in your back, it's not actually the disc, and it's not the facet joint, and it's not the muscle that you originally pulled. It's the fact that certain areas are working far too hard. Other areas, like your core, or could be your oblique muscles, or could be your hip flexors, are actually got weak. It could be that what's happening is that area is very, very stiff, and it's actually stopped you moving well. So when you try and move, it's actually become a posture issue, and you can't move because the joints and the capsules and everything else around it are sore, until you get to the point where that's it. You're in constant pain, and you've got certain things that you can do and you'll be fine, and then you've got certain things that you can't do, and then you get to the point where you're in constant pain and everything hurts. And that's probably when we get a lot of our clients, because they've got to the point where they've just thought, I can't deal with this anymore. It doesn't matter what I do now, everything hurts, and I'm just going nowhere. So in a nutshell, from my point of view, like, that's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that you spent God knows how many years just managing and probably living with what you've got, rather than probably being told that you can be proactive and you can work out a way to change what's going on. We had a client that came in earlier this week, and she'd had pain for 20 years, and she'd go and get it treated and go and get it managed every 4 to 6 weeks and have a couple of treatments, and then it would be better. But that's not working. It's not getting her better. What it's doing is it's keeping her on a flat line, that she has a little blip and she gets sorted and she's back on that flat line. And that flat line is a level of constant pain, and she just has a little bit of a hit where the pain goes up and it comes back down to here. And what we want to see is that, yes, you might be in pain, but you should be able to taper off and you should be able to have more function, because a disc problem that you had 20 years ago is not likely to be causing you pain that you've got now. Especially if people go back and say, oh, I need to get my disc checked because I had a disc on scan 10 years ago and I need to check that it's not got any bigger, and they go back and they have their scan and lo and behold, nothing's changed. And the issue is that it's not that that's causing the pain, it's more how you're holding yourself, and it's more how you're moving, and it's more how your posture has changed, and also how your body reacts to what you're doing. So and probably cutting sort of a long blurb story short, if you do start with acute pain, and it doesn't have to be back pain, it could be that you've damaged your knee, you've damaged your ankle, you've damaged your hip, it could be your back, it could be your thorax, it could be shoulders, it could be neck, whatever it is. If you have an acute incident where you've got that trauma aspect going on, get it managed well right at the beginning, because if you can get that managed well and you start moving well and effectively, then you're going to be 100% in a better place, because things will get better. It's similar to when you fall off a bike or you fall off something and you hurt your knee and you just can't straighten it, and it feels, and you really struggle because you just think, I can't even do a straight leg lift, I can't even lift my leg off the bed straight because it hurts. And it hurts as well, but your quads, so your big quad muscles become inhibited, and they become inhibited quite quickly. I stacked it on a bike last week. I came off a bike last week being very stupid, and I strained my ligament. I've strained my collateral ligament in my knee, and it was really sore, and I couldn't really walk on it very well for a couple of days. I knew, obviously being a physio, I knew I hadn't done anything stupid, as in I hadn't strained it, I hadn't caused any laxity in the ligament, because I sort of self-tested it, but it was really, really sore. And it was really, really sore to roll over in bed, to get in and out of the car. If I sat on it and twisted stupidly, it really, really hurt. But the biggest shock was that my quads, I couldn't use my quads. I still actually can't, and I'm a week on, I still can't actually physically do a static quad, which is basically straightening my leg out, because my quads are inhibited. And what that basically means is my brain knows that that hurts, and my muscles know it's going to hurt. So when I try and activate my quads, and I just do it, which I'm trying to do now, my left one goes really well, and my right one I actually have to really think about and go, yeah, it's okay, it's not going to hurt, but I have to physically, consciously make it do it. It just won't do it on its own. So it's very, very quick that the body becomes able to protect us. It's very quick at switching muscles off, because it knows that if you activate that muscle, you're going to get pain. Like if I activate that quad, my kneecap pulls against the joint that's a little bit swollen, and that hurts. So the trick around it is to activate your quad with a little bit of a pillow under your leg, so you're still using the muscle, but it's not squashing the joint down. So there's ways around it that we can get around it. So I've just got a little towel under my knee, and I can still then activate my quad, and my quad's happy to work, but it's not pushing into the area of pain. So I know my quads are fine, I know my quads work, and hopefully if it's still a problem, I'll do a little bit more work on it. But I know that I've just tweaked it, because I'm sort of privy to that information, and I know that I haven't done anything daft. Where the problem is that even if you have a small injury, it can have a big effect. So I've just tweaked my collateral ligament on my knee. So it's not lax, there's nothing else going on with it. However, it's caused a whole heap of pain and my quads are inhibited. Now, if you've done quite major damage, you can imagine what's going on there. You're not going to be able to walk that well. Your quads are inhibited, your calves inhibited, your glutes don't work that well, and you walk around with a little bit of a hop. And that's very similar to what happens with back pain, that we get sore and we find that we can't move that well, and then because we're not moving that well, we become like a board, and because we then become like a board, everything is just literally like a robot, and then we get a little bit better and we find that we can actually function, but we find that we're still walking like a robot. And that's where the issue with core muscles working or not working comes into play. And what's actually happening is our big support muscles, so those posture muscles I was talking about, so your QL, your erector spinae, piriformis is a big one, and piriformis will tend to grip, because what we want to do is protect ourselves, and also your hip flexors. And if you have a think about all those muscles that are sat around your pelvis, if the muscles at the front of the pelvis tighten in, the muscles against the front of the spine are solid. You've got your QL and your erector spinae at the back, and they'll brace you as well. And then you do become quite rigid. And then if you're not using those muscles well, it causes your glute muscles to switch off. And I'm being very simplistic here. But if your glute muscles aren't working, you rely more on your hip flexors, and you rely more on those back muscles, and you rely more on your shoulder muscles. And then you have a whole knock-on effect of, you might have started with pain down there, but now you've got pain in your shoulders, and you might have pain in your neck, and you might start to get headaches. And it's also very common that, you get pain that's on the left side in the lower back, but it's actually right-sided in the upper back. So you might find you have left hip issues, but it's right shoulder issues. And it's all about the obliques and the slings and how the muscles interact with each other, as to how that happens. And like I said at the beginning, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at, yes, you might have pain in there. Yes, you might have a disc problem. So you might have a disc at L23, or you might have a disc problem at L45. But because the muscles then splint, that disc problem, that's resolved. What's actually happening further down the track is that your muscles are stiff and your joints are stiff, and it's okay to move. And half of our clients are really worried about moving because movement hasn't been positive for them. Movement has been painful for them, and movement has been an issue for them. And if it's an issue, you won't do it. It's like you say to kids, don't touch the hot plate, and they go, yeah, okay, and then touch the hot plate, and then they probably won't touch it again because they've had that negative experience. And then what happens is, people are told, with all the best will in the world, if you've got back pain, you just need to strengthen your core. So, the biggest comment that we get is, oh, my GP says I'm just weak and I now need to go and strengthen my core. So I went to boot camp and I've been doing planks and my back is so sore. And boot camp's here, core strength starts here. All right, so boot camp is on the 10 plus side of the scale, and the planks, and you needed to start down here at step 1, and you can't get to step 10 if you haven't done step 1, and that's a little bit frustrating that when you do that and you go smack into these F45 CrossFit, boot camp training, high level, high impact personal training sessions. And I'm not saying they're wrong. They have a place and many people love them. However, they're not the place to start. They're your place to go to, or they're your aim to be heading to. And if you start there, you're just setting yourself up for failure. It's like saying to a baby who is just learning to sit, okay, go and walk down some steps. You just don't do it. However, you're at that stage, you're just trying to be able to sit pain-free. You're just trying to be able to get out of bed pain-free. You're trying to be able to get from sitting to standing pain-free, or stand on one leg and put on your pants or socks, or move, or get in and out of a car. And going from that, where you still can't do that pain-free, to going and trying to do planks and boot camp and everything else, is just setting yourself up for failure, and it won't work. And when you're looking at being realistic about your goals, that's what you need to be having in mind. That if you think of things like Michelle Bridges, she's got like the 12, can't remember what it's called, it's 12 WBT, but it's her 12-week boot camp training. Things take 3 months. Things take that time to get adjustments. When you're looking at losing weight, when you're looking at getting a physiological effect, when you're looking at trying to train the body to move differently, trying to get the body to do something that's a little bit different, it takes at least 12 weeks to get there, because it's just the way the physiology works. And it doesn't mean you can't get good results, and it doesn't mean that you can't see some changes in the first week or the second week. We have heaps of clients that have been, in constant pain for 5, 10, 20 years, and they get some relief within the first week because they have some light bulb moments of what they're doing. And if you can say to somebody, you're getting pain because this is going on, and each time you do this, you get pain, that's huge, because you then take that on board and you can move and you can change it, instead of saying, yep, that joint's stiff, let me move it for you, go away, come back when it gets stiff again, which is really go away, come back when it hurts again. And what we're doing is saying, yep, that's causing you pain, great, we can move it. However, you're doing this, and this is what's causing it to get stiff. So you need to stop doing this and you need to stretch it this way. And that will mean that your pain won't come back in 2 days' time, or it won't come back tomorrow. It means that you can carry on releasing it and continue what we've done, which is loosening it up. And you might find that that lasts you 5 days to start with. Then once you're aware and you've got that, oh, actually that has worked, you'll probably buy into, I need to do something and be proactive. But you need to have some positives first. You need to buy into the fact that sometimes it's exactly what you're doing day in, day out that is causing the problem. Sometimes it's exactly how you stand that's causing the problem. Sometimes it's exactly how your workstation is set up. So if you've got 2 or 3 computers and you're constantly turning to one side, that all day long can cause you problems. Or, sitting here or there. If you've got a little tilt, you've probably noticed I've got a tilt. Can't see because what opposite way around. It's actually an opposite effect in the computer. I tilt my head that way because that's comfortable. So when I'm talking, I generally have a little lilt that way. And that means that these joints here are probably a little bit tighter than these joints here. So if I was to look at my neck and have my posture checked, I would probably find that going this way is going to be quite comfortable for me. Going that way is probably going to be a little bit stiff because these are tight. And that's what we're looking for. Is there a disparity in how we move? Do we have a compensation? Do our neck muscles look different? If I move my arms, do they look different? If I do this, have I got the same movement both sides? Am I moving easily side to side? And that's where biomechanics, and that's where, how the body moves, and that's where how we function day to day comes into play. And that's what's going to have the biggest effect on how you manage your pain. What you're doing 24/7 when you're not seeing us. So if you're coming into somebody twice a week or 3 times a week for 20 minutes to an hour, great. We can sort out things, we can do things, we can mobilize things, we can get the right things strong, we can get the right things loosened up, we can get joints moving well, we can, you can walk out feeling $1 million. But then if you go back into the other 23 hours doing what you normally do, that exacerbates your pain. That's when it just comes straight back. So what you need is a strategy that allows you to work out what helps you and do heaps more of it and break it down into your day-to-day activities so that you can stay better for longer. And that's what we're really good at, because realistically, people don't want to come in and be told, go away and do this. You need to lie on the floor 3 times a day and you need to do these 20 minutes of exercise in this way every day for the next 2 weeks and then come back and see us. People don't do it. There are a handful. So those of you that do it are very, very grateful that you do. And we do know that you do it. But, times have changed. We do not have time. People are constantly connected. People are constantly on the move. We don't have that 20 minutes where we can just have a break. Everybody is at, time management is key. And if we can change it, so it might be simple, it's something as simple we give you as whenever you see that you're stopped at red traffic lights and you're going to be there for a little while, just sit back in the chair, sit back upright, reset and make sure your weight's even on both bum cheeks, and then off you go. And then 2 minutes down the road you would have collapsed again. But that might be something for you guys to have a look at. The next time you're in a car and you're stopped at the traffic lights, just do a mental check and see, where's your body at? Is your weight on one side? Are your knees equal? Are you leaning to the central console? The roads generally have a little bit of an off camber, so they have a little bit of a slight degree just to allow drainage. It's obviously negligible, but it is enough that you get tipped, especially if you're an automatic car driver. I hate automatics. I have an automatic at the moment. And I love manual cars. I love the fact that you have to put a clutch in because it means that you sit a little bit more upright. And there definitely appears to, I don't quote me because I haven't actually done any research to back this up, but there's definitely seems to be a bit of a collaboration or a bit of consistency in people who lean one way who also don't drive a manual car. So that's, if anyone's a great researcher out there and wants to take that on board, that would be fabulous to know that for sure. But I'm English and I love manual cars, and it's definitely noticeable that, do you by any chance drive an automatic? Yes, I do. And it's like, well, you need to be aware of your posture because you're not getting that leg movement going, so you're not consistently righting yourself. You're leaning to the left all the time. So check that out for me. Check it out when you get to a traffic lights and let me know. But yeah, I mean, a bit of a long rant and bamble today, but the biggest thing is if you have back pain, there is always something you can do. There is always something that can be tweaked. There is always something that can be changed. What you're needing to find is that, your back pain starts here. And over the years, there's an added layer and an added layer and an added layer and an added layer. And what's happened is that the joints might have stiffened up, the joint capsule then stiffens up, you don't move as well, so you start overusing something else. That gets tight. Short tissue or short muscles mean that that's restricted and that can cause you pain. Other muscles work harder to try and compensate because that side doesn't move as well, so other bits have to work harder to try and compensate and try and make you move, and then you're in a whole heap of pain. And that's more a postural dysfunction, and it's more an issue from the tissues not really being able to react normally. And this is where a lot of the, let's do trigger point release, let's do foam roller release, let's do this, let's do that, this muscle's tight, this muscle's overworking, what have you. This is where everyone's jumped on the bandwagon with trigger point release and tissue release. And yes, it works, it does work, if that's your problem. The thing you need to be aware of is that if you've got something that's really overworking and it's strong, so say your hip flexor's tight, it could be tight and weak, it could be tight and strong, it could be long and weak, and it could be long and strong. And you've got to work out why it's that way to have an effective management that moves you forward. Because if your hip flexors is what's holding you up and you take away what's holding you up, you're going to fall in a heap on the floor, or you're going to end up in different pain. If you're finding that your piriformis is working too hard, which is quite common, piriformis syndrome, you've got your sciatic nerve that goes through your piriformis, and if it's working too hard, it can squeeze on your sciatic nerve, and you can get sciatic symptoms of pain that goes down the leg. And so A lot of people have piriformis that's working too hard because it's functioning because glutes are weak, or it's working too hard because their ITB and their lateral quads are pulling their femur into a rotation pattern, and then they're also getting knee and patella issues. So again, if you release the piriformis, you're not going to get lasting effects because you haven't released also or managed tight tissues in lateral quads and weak tissues in medial quads. So you're doing one part of the equation but not the whole picture. And in order to get lasting effects that stay there, you need to look at why that's going on, and you need to look at, yes, we're not just managing a knee. When the knee pain's gone, we'll manage the hip, and when the hip pain's gone, we'll manage that. You need to look at everybody as a whole. You need to look at, well, actually, posture-wise, this isn't correct. Posture-wise, they're crooked. Posture-wise, they're crooked and rotated. Posture-wise, they're crooked and scoliosed and rotated. And it doesn't mean that you look like Quasimodo, but we are looking for subtle changes because subtle changes cause pain. If I said to you, just hold your arm up here, and then hold it there, you'd probably go, yeah, right. And then if we say, well, hold it there with 5 kilos on and hold it there for 2 hours, not many people would be very happy because you'll know, actually, that's getting sore, this joint's getting sore, I'm starting to get achy, and now that's getting sore, and everything else, and then you'll start using your neck. Similar thing is happening all over your body all day, every day. Your posture is not in the right position, so something else is compensating. Because that compensates, you compensate higher up. So if I sit up nice and tall here, if I lean to my left, which is going to show right on you, but if I lean to my left, if I just lean, I'm going to fall over. So what happens is I have to side bend to compensate to stay upright, and it's exactly the same process in the posture. And this is what you'll find a lot of chiros will work on. They'll work on your alignment, and they'll say, this is causing a bit of a compensation. You've got, this level here that's bent this way, and you've got this level here that needs adjusting, and they just do it in a different way. And they're doing it by showing you the skeletal way and the way the bones are aligned, and you can see that obviously quite clearly on x-ray. And what we're doing is look at it from obviously we still treat the bones, so we can still mobilize, we can still manip and adjust and do all those things as well. But then what we're also looking at is, have you got the soft tissue to hold you there? So if you've got a curve that goes this way, do you have the soft tissue that's going to be able to hold you this way, or is your soft tissue going to pull you the other way? So if my QL is tight here, it's going to pull me into a side bend. So if I release that QL, that's great, but it's still going to be strong, so it's going to pull me that way. So what I'd actually need to do is release it, give you some tools to release it, but also give you some tools to strengthen up the other side so that there's some resistance there and there's some balance there, so that you don't just go straight back into that posture again. And the other side of that is it actually your QL on the other side that is dysfunctioning or weak? Or is it the fact that you're here and it's actually your obliques on the other side at the front that aren't functioning? So if my obliques on the left are allowing me to just splay, my QL on that side will get short. And if I strengthen up my obliques on that side to pull me back, does that actually mean my QL is dysfunctional, or does it mean that my obliques are weak? And that tends to be the minefield. That tends to be the little bit, lots of people tend to have the bits of the picture and they'll say, my QL's tight and this is tight and this is tight. And then we've got to work out the why behind it, because if you release it, that's great, but it will come back. And if you release it, it will, improve, and your pain in that QL or that piriformis or whatever will improve, but you need to give something back. So with piriformis, it tends to be that it's overworking because you're using it to stabilize along with TFL and ITB and lateral quads, big and probably adductors as well, to compensate for a weaker core and weaker glutes that aren't really holding you and functioning. Again, big gross statement there, but it's just an example of what can happen if you don't have the right muscles and you're then changing your posture to compensate those bits that you've compensated for. The tighter things will tend to get tighter. The ones that are on an elongation will tend to get longer. Both will tend to be weak, or they might be working really, really hard. And what you then need to do is strengthen up the right muscle so it can take over, and release that muscle that's working too hard or that is shortened depending on what it's doing, and allow that harder muscle to work. So if you take something away, you need to give something back. If you want to stretch something out because it's working a little bit too much, you need to strengthen up something in the opposite direction. And again, big gross statements there, but it gives you an idea that just going, yeah, my back's sore, I just need to move this, is probably not going to work if you're in chronic pain. And also, if you say, yeah, I put a hot pack on it because it makes it relax, great. It makes it relax and it feels good, and you can move. So then move and do the exercises you need to do because you're in a better place. Same thing with massage. If you find that massage works, massage will work and you might get some relief, but it will come back again if you're not addressing what the underlying causes are. So not saying that you don't see your massage therapist, not saying that you don't see your chiro, not saying that you don't see your physio, but if you are one of these people who can safely say, you know what, I've had pain for the last 5 or 10 years and all I do is get it managed. What's happening is, I'm on this base level, it blips and I get it managed and I come back down. It blips and it manages and I come back down. But I'm gradually getting worse, or I'm gradually finding that each episode is harder to get rid of and each episode is taking longer to get rid of. Then you need a new management strategy and you need to find out why that's going on, because otherwise you'll wake up one day and find out that actually it's probably been 10 years since I've been pain-free. So ask yourself that question. When was the last time that you were pain-free? When was the last time that you can move? When was the last time that you can say, oh, actually I can sit at a dinner table for 2 hours, or I can go to the theatre and I can sit comfortably, or go to the movies and I'm not concerned about not being able to move. It's one of those things that if it is affecting you and it's affecting what you can do and it's affecting your lifestyle, then you'll probably make a difference. But anyway, if you're in chronic pain, don't feel that there's never nothing else you can try. I'm not saying you will be pain-free. So, we can't make everybody pain-free, but what we can do is have a look at you and see what we can offer you. And an assessment is an hours of your day, an hour of our day, and it can give you a bit of an idea whether we think you're helpable or not. And also, it can give you an idea whether what you thought is the problem is actually the problem. So a few bit of food for thought. Don't forget your homework. Your homework was to see where your posture is when you're sitting at the traffic lights. So for those of you that take nothing out of this video at all, or nothing out of this live, if you go to stop at this stop sign, just feel where your posture is. You can even do it while you're sat watching the telly. So if you're watching the telly tonight, or you're sat reading a book, just stop and do a mental body scan and have a feel of where your weight is. I've set myself on the floor, so I'm sat on the floor in front of a chair. The laptop's on a table, so I'm square. My feet are through the table legs, so I can't move. But if I wanted to move, I'd probably be, sat square on, and I'd probably be slumped. And it's where's comfortable for you and where your body normally falls that's quite important. And if you're consistently finding that you're sitting left side hip, you probably find that that's your comfy spot for a reason. When you try and sit the other side, it might be uncomfortable. And that might be just some homework for you. Just work out where your comfy spots are, work out what your tendencies are. Do you favour the left side all the time? Do you sit on your left hip all the time? Do you fall left in the car? Body scan when you're sitting in the car, on the computer, and at traffic lights, and let me know how to go. Take care.